So my first question is probably the most important question. How is Miles?
Oh, I was hoping you would ask that because he had this really, really important checkup yesterday. Yep, it was his 2-year checkup since his chemo ended, and they check about all the cancer, but also about his learning functions and basically every function you can have. And his mom wrote "happy dance" smiley face, and so it was a great appointment. And he's all checked out, and that's really he was in remission this whole for the last 2 years, but that was. I was holding my breath.
And have you seen him since the film finished?
Oh yeah, we see him. Well, he lives like 7 hours away,
Right.
so it's kind of a.
Has he kept the Batman walk, the Batkid walk?
No. He only does that if he's fully in the garb. He doesn't. If he's wearing one piece, he doesn't do it. No, he'll only do it with EJ.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to talk about the making of the film itself, but I want to start by talking about charitable giving in the United States because watching this movie made me wonder what the trend was, and I looked it up. According to Giving USA, 2014 was the all-time record in the United States for charitable giving, $358.4 billion, which was up from $340 billion in 2013. These are inflation-adjusted dollars, so this is apples to apples, and it broke the record set in 2007. So in working on this film and seeing what happens when people get activated and motivated to give, what is your take about how social media is playing into this accelerating generosity within the United States for charity? Kurt?
I'm honestly not sure. As with the event itself and the film, it's one of those things that I think it's really kind of hard to know because you start seeing an aggregate response of everyone, but it's hard to know what all those little pieces are per se because there's so many of them. So I'm honestly not sure.
Dana, do you have some theories?
I mean, I would just think that it's just not to. I live in Silicon Valley, so I don't want to sound all Silicon Valley-ish, but but it really just amplifies a cool message. So something like Batkid, not that it was film. I mean, people didn't give money to that event, but it certainly got the word out about Make-A-Wish. So I think it just takes something that's cool and can blow it up. And so I think you saw that with the ice bucket challenge, like the thing in your head, the ice bucket challenge, and other things like that, and the Coney 2012 was it? And so I think it's really like just an awesome force. And I think that, there's so much negativity around social media, and Twitter in particular, less so, I think Facebook, but I think it's amazing to have things that can happen that can propel a movement forward. And you see it, with the revolutions and other things.
Now, one of the most amazing things about the making of this film is that neither of you was there at the time. Is that correct?
Yes.
True.
So this is some great reverse engineering. Were either of you aware of it?
I was not.
I was, but she was not.
So what happened? How did you hear about it, and how did you kind of go back in time and create a movie that made it look like you were there?
It's so embarrassing. We talk in the film about the 2 billion people who watched it, and I was not one of the 2 billion people. But I was editing that week on another project, and I guess I wasn't on social media at all that week, and I just missed the whole thing. And then some colleagues of mine were talking about it, and then my kids, who at the time were like all under 7 years old, they started talking about it. And I was looking for a project to do with that my kids would enjoy and like to participate in, and so I thought to myself, what a great documentary that would have been. The person who's doing that is super lucky, and I kind of forgot about it. And I think we all have lots of projects that you see and you're like, that would have been really cool. And then a couple weeks later, one of my old colleagues from NBC, we were chatting. I said, what stories are you working on? She goes, oh, I'm trying to get an interview with the Batkid. And I said, oh, that would have been such a great documentary. And she's like, oh, well, I'm going to call them when we hang up. Do you want me to see if they'll meet with us about a documentary? And I was like, sure. She calls me back 5 minutes later. She's like, oh, I can't. They're not doing interviews anymore, but we can go in tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. for an interview about a documentary. So
with the Make-A-Wish group.
Yep. So we went in and we had a 2.5-hour meeting with them, and Patricia is very exciting to talk to, obviously.
That's clear in the film.
And the main question I asked her was, what did you intend to happen? And when she said she was hoping for 200 people to show up, and I had since done research and knew what had happened, that to me was just, once I knew that was the nugget that I wanted to go on, that 200 people turned into 25,000.
This is how far after the event that you're having this conversation?
This was about 3 weeks.
3 weeks. So it's very fresh in her mind.
Yes, I think they had almost been like catatonic for at least like 10 days after it. So I think it was the perfect time, because I think before, actually, I think 3 or 4 other crews had approached them, but they just couldn't deal with it, obviously. I mean, it was too much. So I think I was just the luckiest person on the planet to get that, because I think even maybe a few months after, they wouldn't have done it either, because they kind of wanted to move on. So it was perfect timing.
So you have this meeting. They're interested in a documentary. You're available. You're looking for something to make for your kids, given, if you know her past work, not terribly kid-friendly, child molestation, terror, household chemicals. Very serious things, but not the kind of things you want to cuddle up with your kids and watch. So the timing is right professionally. At what point do you say, did you film any of this?
It was the very last question. So going into the meeting, I knew I obviously missed it, but I was like, okay, it was one of the biggest social media phenomenons ever. So a lot of people, maybe we can crowdsource the video for this, even though I knew that would have been a technical disaster to do. Documentaries are always hard enough to do with the most pristine of footage. So, I was like, okay, we can do that if worse comes to worse. But the last question I asked after the 2.5-hour meeting, I was like, you didn't happen to shoot any of it, did you? I was expecting like a little handy cam. They're like, oh yeah, we wanted a video for our fundraiser coming up. So we had a guy with 5 cameras. I was like, wait, we don't even use 5 cameras. So yes, they had somebody shooting it to make a video for them to hope to bring in money at their gala. And I spoke with him. I was able to get that footage. And then also when between the 29th of October and the 15th, when it happened, when it was going viral, the city and Make-A-Wish realized that not everybody would be able to see all that was happening. Most people would show up at City Hall at the end of the day. So Comcast has a sports station in San Francisco, and they were so kind, and they donated a crew for the day to shoot all the capers and then quickly go back to their trucks and edit them so that they could put together something. And then the city got a Jumbotron. That was part of the $100,000 that they spent. And so they had an edited package so everybody could see what happened throughout the day. So then we were able to get that footage, which was amazing footage, especially of the crowds. They had a lot of footage. So we got that footage, and those were the bulk of everything. But then the thing that really, I think, saved us was the family, the Scotts, had been given a present of a video camera as they were leaving town. They had never shot any video before. And on their way out of town, somebody gave them a video camera. And they shot the Circus Center where there were no cameras. Wow. And they shot some amazing, I mean, usually when you get footage from people, you're like, you don't have high hopes for what it is. And I remember the morning, it was like 5 a.m. I was up clicking through their things. I'm like, these are amazing. And the Circus Center that had shot some of the video themselves, they lost their footage. So that was gone.
Lost as in just erased it?
Deleted it. When I told Kurt, he was like, wait, what do you mean they lost it? I'm like, Kurt, people lose media. They do.
I don't lose
Not
media.
things you need.
He doesn't.
So, Kurt, when did you come into the project? Were you at this meeting as well?
No. In fact, I had, until June 29th of last year, I had no idea this was going to be entering my life. I was working on other things, and she had 2 different editors fall out on her. We know each other from the film festival circuit and whatnot. And she called me up and said, I need somebody to edit this movie, and I'm supposed to have it done in like 3 months for the Sundance deadline. Is there any way that's possible? And I thought, wow, 3 months is very fast for a first cut, but let's see. And she had 50 hours, I think, of material at the time, and kept shooting while we were cutting.
Keeping secrets from him. I was shooting, but wasn't like I found the Uber driver in the meanwhile, and the mayor agreed to do it, but I wouldn't tell him because I knew it would give him a heart attack. So then I'd be like, when I thought he was in a good mood, I'd be like, here's some more.
So yeah, and I think I gave her a heart attack because I said, okay, I want to watch every frame of everything before I start cutting.
He watched every frame.
Which because because I said different things are going to occur to you than occur to me, and I want So it was 7 days a week till 4 a.m. making it. And my first cut was actually 2 minutes shorter than this. I have a tendency to trim tighter, and I paced things very fast. And she was like, okay, let's let it breathe a little bit more. I'm like, okay.
Well, how did you? I mean, obviously there is a chronological thread to the story, but as filmmakers who have worked in narrative film as well, how did you see the acts breaking down, and how did you see the dramatic structure of the film at odds or playing against the chronological nature of it?
Well, for me, when I first looked at the footage or even was thinking about what is this movie going to be, I thought two things. One, it's a Frank Capra movie with real people. It's a Wonderful Life in real life. And two, it's a buddy movie, because you meet, Little Miles, you meet EJ, and then you track them separately for the first half. They meet the night before in this magical, superhero training camp, and then they go on this adventure together. And the whole movie at that point is a journey to the line that EJ has at the end of the film, which is when he says, "It's like I have a new little brother now." And so there's that, but there's also an aspect to the movie where it's kind of a heist film too. It's like the first half is the planning, and the second half is the execution and the knocking them down, right? So those were kind of the genre boxes I put it in my head when I was putting it together. I can't speak for Dana's approach, but that was how I thought of it.
Right.